Hey guys, Project Zodiac here. I'm back with another video, and I'm sorry it took so long to get this Xenoblade video out. One reason why it took so long I'll explain in a minute, but the other reason it's actually because I've just been really busy with school, work, and some personal things. So yeah, this took a lot longer, and this is not going to be a lot longer too. So the reason for why this video also took a long time is because when I was coming up with ideas for this particular essay, I thought I would focus on one thing in particular, which I kind of wrote down a long time ago when I was still making all those previous videos I've made. I'm still gonna be talking about that one thing that this video was originally supposed to be, but I decided to expand on that concept as the original explanation for it would have touched on Future Connected a lot anyway. So the more I thought about it, the more I saw at the same time that a lot of people are still not fully sure how Future Connected ties into Xenoblade 3. So I thought instead of doing two different essays that are basically somewhat about the same exact thing, I thought I would just make them into one essay. So that's why this one's also a little bit longer, and also just because another reason for why it took so long to get this video out. But with that said, this essay will have spoilers for all Xenoblade games. And also on another note, if you guys hear any weird sounds in the background, please ignore those. It's my dog. He has to stay in the room with me today. But with all that said, so how does Xenoblade Future Connected tie into Xenoblade 3? And what exactly is the Black Fog and the Mobius and the Fog King as well? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about here. So let's get into the connections with these two games first, as those are going to be the faster things. There's many things in Xenoblade Future Connected that ties directly into Xenoblade 3. The biggest ones and the most clearest ones is that Melia is made queen in Future Connected, and Shulk makes and uses a power frame to give him extra strength to fight the Fog Beast. Obviously, this explains the origins of Melia being the queen in Xenoblade 3 and why all of the Kevesi soldiers have power frames on their outfits in Xenoblade 3. But there are a few smaller connections too. The first is that Melia kind of has a vision, or rather a feeling or intuition of the future, and one that says it will be dark and full of destruction. This shows that she was given a vision of what happens to the two worlds and the constant state of the worlds being in an endless war against each other in Xenoblade 3. The next connection is that Ruru, I think that's how you say that, Rududo, tells the party that he has an idea of the party fusing together and becoming a strong monster. This is an idea that will be somewhat done with the Ouroboros forms, as that is actually a half organic and ether based and also half man-made technology that gives two people the ability to become one, as Nia explains that in Xenoblade 3. The third smaller connections is with the Monado Rex. We see the Monado Rex in the official DLC art, and we see that Melia has it in her room in Xenoblade 3. And we are also hinted at the mentor of the founder of House Reid. It could have been Shulk, as this person did carry a red sword. Though this person is most likely Shulk, there is still some proof that maybe the founder of House Ortiz was Shulk, though again it's most likely the mentor of House Reid that was Shulk. There's a few other connections and hints throughout the entire series, not just Future Connected, that points towards what we see in Xenoblade 3. For example, during Melia's trial in Xenoblade 1, her ancestor says that she is about 80% Homs, meaning that the Homs genes is stronger than the Hyantia genes, which, given the fact that the start of Xenoblade 3 is only about 20 years after Xenoblade 1 and 2, could mean that within the next two generations of humans and Hyantia hybrids that they could most likely all be Homs at this particular point, and which is why they could have smaller wings. So again, that could be why the Hyantias have smaller wings in Xenoblade 3, much smaller than Melia and Uni, because those two, Melia and Uni, would be the first generation hybrids rather than second generation hybrids. With that note, Uni could also theoretically be Tyrelia's daughter, given that Melia does not seem to have a motherly connection to Uni as Nia does to Mio. I'm not saying that this is the case, it's just a popular theory, and it's one that makes sense because again, Uni would be a first generation hybrid. Also, Uni is the only other Hyantia other than Melia in Xenoblade 3 to have medium-sized wings, and also wings that are not the same color as her hair. And this is a big example of the Hyantia being so different now. As I mentioned before, their wings are tiny and they also match their hair. The only exception is Uni. So we have to wonder, is this all due to genetics like I just mentioned? I mean, it would make sense given that Melia becomes the queen of the High Entia at the end of Future Connected and sometime later the queen of her world. So we can assume that given her nature, people started to see things how she sees things, and the High Entias get closer with the Homs and had kids with the Homs. This could be another connection to Xenoblade 3 as to why we have so many High Entias in Xenoblade 3. Now, before we continue on with some connections, I'm going to take a step back because I really want to talk about this theory as well. So I guess this is like a third thing in this video, I suppose. So while genetics could be why there are so many High Entia in Xenoblade 3, it unfortunately doesn't make very much sense. The people of the two universes would have to have been fighting for at least 2 generations before Zed implemented the Flame Clock system for the High Entia to be more Homs-like than High Entia, as they are in this game. That means that the remaining High Entia at the end of Xenoblade 1 and Future Connected would have to have gotten kids with Homs very early on. Again, this is fine and understandable given what we see in Future Connected, but the issue is, like I mentioned before, those first generation hybrid kids would have the wing size of Melia and Uni. These first generation hybrid kids would then have to grow up enough to be able to have kids of their own, and they would need to do so with Homs as well in order to have the High Entias that we see in Xenoblade 3. In other words, that's at least 15 to 40 years after Xenoblade Future Connected ends for the second generation High Entias to be born. We also know, using clues from the games, that the intro for Xenoblade 3 before the world merges is only about 20 years after Xenoblade 1 ends. That means that there would have only been enough time for the first generation hybrids to be born, the ones with Melia and Uni's wing size. The second generation would have had to be born in Aionios. The problem here is, if the High Entias and the new races we see in Xenoblade 3 are born in Aionios, which would have to be after Zed takes over Origin, how is it that they are part of the Flame Clock system? We know it is possible to add someone to it, as we see it happen with the worst character in all of the Xeno games, that being with Shania being added to the system, but we also know that it was a special case for her, and it doesn't seem to be something that they normally do. And we also know that they couldn't have added other data into Origin about the second generation High Entia when they were born in Aionios, as Zed took control of Origin just seconds before the worlds merged. So basically, that leaves a big question: where do these second generation High Entia really come from? And how is it that they keep getting reborn in the Flame Clock cycle? Honestly, there's enough information to suggest a few things. 1. The Flame Clock system was not implemented right away. It could have taken a few years for Console Y to make the Flame Clock system from what we hear in the game. 2. People lived normally on Aionios or at war with Zed and the consoles while on Aionios for years before the Flame Clock system was added. 3. People can be removed from the Flame Clock system and the 10-year cycle, as we see with the Ouroboros and the founder of the House Ortiz and of House Rhodes. 4. People can be added to the Flame Clock system and the 10-year cycle, as seen after Console Y invents the Flame Clock and with them adding Shania to it. 5. There have been people who were able to escape the Flame Clock system as in not being implemented into it. And 6. Some people that were in Origin were not added to the Flame Clock system. So what I'm trying to say with all this is that the worlds could have been fighting against Zed and the consoles for those additional 15 to 25 years it would take for the second generation hybrids to be born before Console Y makes the Flame Clock system. These babies would be born in Aionios, and Zed could have added them as babies to the system, but since they're born in Aionios, they would not be part of Origin, which means they would face the same fate as the people in the city at the end of the game when the worlds merge again, and they would not be there in the new world. But to tie this back to the main topic of this essay, this could be another thing that Future Connected kind of answers as well. Because first of all, we already know that there are a few other first generation hybrid High Entias in Xenoblade 1, such as Telion. By the time that the 20 years pass where the worlds are about to merge, the first generation hybrids probably already had kids with their home partners, and their kids, those second generation hybrids, could have already been added to Origin by the time Zed took over. This is again all due to the unification Melia gave her world at the end of Future Connected. Another theory is that the High Entias we see in Xenoblade 3 are not second generation hybrids, but the first generation hybrids that are the children of the parents who had the Teletia genes removed from them. In other words, Tyraria and Talion might have found a way to modify the High Entia genes so that the Telethia genes are not there anymore, and this resulted in their children, the children of the people who has this gene removed, to look a little bit different. Though I do believe the first option out of these two is the most likely one, where the second generation High Entia hybrids were literally just a few months old to a year old, like little babies, when they added them into Origin and then Zed took over. But now another thing that we can tie in from the other series into Xenoblade 3 is Melia's ancestor. Going back to him, he tells her that she will rule the High Entia and will likely be their last ruler. This falls in line with what we see in Xenoblade 3 as well, as that because she has been ruling for a very long time and also was the last queen of the High Entia, because again, it seems like eventually she becomes the queen of the world that she is on instead. Another smaller connection is that in Xenoblade 2, Rex gets to see everyone's thoughts when he meets the architect. There, he sees that Nia is mad that he does not see her in a romantic way and never noticed her. This is done to show Rex that he does have someone that loves him and puts up with his love for someone else. In a way, it kind of opens Rex's eyes to end up being with Nia eventually, as well as with Pyra and Mythra, as we see in Xenoblade 3. Another example of some connections is the architect showing us what Rex wants with Pyra and Mythra, for them to be two individuals and to be with them. This also somewhat foreshadows what happens in Xenoblade 3, as we are shown that Pyra and Mythra really do come back to life at the end of Xenoblade 2, and they really do become two individuals and stay with Rex as well. Another example is the architect passing down all of his information to Pyra, which could explain how the two worlds got the idea to make Origin, which is in turn related to the Lifehold unit from Xenoblade X, which I talk a little bit more about in my Is Xenoblade X Connected to Xenoblade 3 video essay. I'll put the link for that in the description as well. With all of that said, there's a lot of little hints throughout all of the games that point towards what we see in Xenoblade 3. But given that we are focusing on how Future Connected ties into Xenoblade 3, let's just go back to that. There are probably so many other smaller connections and references that we just don't realize or skip over when looking at the two games. I mean, let's take a look at the Ouroboros form again. It was hinted at by an NPC, for example. So there might be other lines of dialogue or even events that we're not really understanding is a connection to Xenoblade 3 at this particular moment. With all that said, there are a lot of subtle things that Future Connected hints about and explains when it comes to Xenoblade 3, though at the same time, I don't think it's as much as I'm making it seem like there is. Other than the things I mentioned, there might be only just a few things here and there that we still don't really realize or know about. But with all that said, that leads me to the second half of this video essay, and which is finally the original topic of this essay, the original topic that I was going to focus on with this essay, and that has to do with the Fog Beast, the Fog King, the Black Fog, Mobius, Zed, the Annihilation events, all of that. So most people are aware by now that the Fog Beast and the Black Fog are connected, but how so? Honestly, I think that the answer is very, very clear. First, let's talk about the Fog Beast, the Fog King, the Rifts, all of that. All the things that we see in Future Connected. They are often compared to the Gnosis from Xenosaga, and they kind of are the Gnosis. But what are the Gnosis? Basically, they are non-physical creatures who come from a non-physical plane called the imaginary number domain, and humans are not really able to see them or hurt them, but by activating something called a Hilbert effect, they are brought forward to the physical domain and can be hurt. But they can also enter the physical world themselves when they want to hurt people. And according to Wilhelm from Xenosaga, the Gnosis are also the form of people who have rejected others and the world. They seek salvation, but are faced with being overcome with loneliness and fading away. They choose instead to return everything to the beginning. So what does all of this have to do with the Fog Beast and the Fog King and everything else that we're talking about now? Well, everything. The Fog Beasts, for example, are really not able to be defeated very easily, especially the Fog King, because normal weapons don't really work on it. Shulk even has to upgrade his Monado replica in order for him to use a new ability just to hurt the Fog King. And basically, the Rift seems to be a gateway to a different dimension, which pulls the Fog King in. On top of that, the Fog Beasts seem to be like regular animals that have been made to look like the Tainted from Xenoblade X, while the Fog King himself is a Gyuro from Xenoblade 2, which means that it does come from a different dimension. This is all things we know before, it's nothing new, so what does this have to do with the Black Fog from Xenoblade 3, especially with Mobius? Well, the answer goes back to the Gnosis. The Fog Beasts and the Fog Kings are the Gnosis of the Xenoblade series, but they're also more than that. And this is how they connect with Mobius and the Black Fog. The Rift and the Fog King only appear 1 year after the end of Xenoblade 1 and 2, and at the end of both games, a new world is made on each of their universes, and it's also two universes without gods in a way, without something keeping the two universes apart anymore. So the two universes began to look for each other and to go back to how they used to be as one universe. At the time, the two worlds did not know that this shift was happening, but that's the Rift. That's the start of the two universes beginning to merge, but it's also a little bit more than that, and we'll get to that in a minute. The Fog King comes from this Rift, and the Rift is connected to the real number domain, which is the physical world, which is Xenoblade 2's universe. It gets pulled to the imaginary number domain, which is the consciousness world, which is the Xenoblade 1 universe. These two worlds make up the lower domain of the universe, which more on that will be talked about in my next essay. The Fog King resembles the Gyro from Xenoblade 2, specifically the Inferno Gyro boss, which is the one that drops Galia's ID card, which means that's what becomes of her in the Xenoblade 2 world, while she becomes Meyneth in Xenoblade 1, which is similar to how Klaus becomes the Architect in Xenoblade 2, but his other half becomes Zanza in Xenoblade 1. But at the same time, the Gyro we fight in Future Connected might not be the same one in Xenoblade 2, since we killed that one in Xenoblade 2, and because Future Connected is set 1 year later. With that said, the Fog King is shrouded in smoke and black fog. The Rift came, as I said, from the worlds starting to merge, but why did it focus over where the High Entia are in Future Connected? Well, that's because out of all the races in Xenoblade 1, they were the ones with the most worries and fears at the end of Xenoblade 1. Those worries and fears being getting unbalanced and them not knowing what to do with their kingdom, as that's somewhat gone. All of that kind of made it so the Rift could appear and manifest their fears in the form of the Fog King, which was a monster pulled from another world. So they were basically bringing their fears to life. And all of this is just a precursor to Mobius and the Annihilation events and the Black Fog in Xenoblade 3. In other words, the Fog Beasts and the Fog Kings, they are all another form or another part of Mobius and Zed, the Black Fog, and the Annihilation events. And I'll explain that in a little bit. But going back to Future Connected, the Rift is also another form of the Annihilation events, and they're all just classified by and being brought forward with the Black Fog. They are all part of the Black Fog, in short. All of these things, they're all from the Black Fog. And what brings the Black Fog is the universes merging, but also, more importantly, it's the manifestations of people's fears. In Xenoblade 3, it is explained that the Black Fog is a warning of an Annihilation event happening at some point in that specific area. The Annihilation event itself is a destruction event that is caused by the two worlds destroying each other. The more Black Fog in an area, the more chances that area has to have an Annihilation event. The reason for this is due to people's continuous subconscious fears, even from within Origin, that the world would have been destroyed and no one would get to be alive again. These fears are what brings forth the Black Fog to create the Annihilation events. But the Black Fog is also inside of all of the Mobius, and all of the Mobius, when they exceed their Ouroboros states, will cause an Annihilation event themselves. Also, Mobius cannot really track where people are if they're in an area that is shrouded with Black Fog. The reason for this is because, as I just explained, the Black Fog is a part of them. So anything that might be in an area that's full of Black Fog, Mobius cannot see by astral projection or tracking, because when they look at the Black Fog, they only see the things that makes them who they are in a way, and not the things that are there. So the Black Fog blocks their remote viewing because it's like a sheet of their own essence covering everything, so they have to be there physically to see what is going on. Also, Mobius is, like I said, full of Black Fog. They are created this way so that they can help power people's fears, thus powering them and Zed, and they are created by Zed, who he himself is a Mobius and their king in a way. Zed was created by the manifestation of people's fears and worries that Origin won't work and that the universes would merge but that everybody would die. Zed was being built up basically for many years before he fully manifested that second before the worlds merged, and from him all other Mobius comes, and he himself is full of black fog. In fact, when we fight him in his final form, he's literally just a big black fog with a face. The black fog is all of these things, and we first start seeing it in the games soon after people made worlds without a higher power keeping the balance of things. It kind of shows us how humanity can be very unbalanced and how much fear and negative emotions we have. And honestly, that is the biggest connection between Future Connected and Xenoblade 3. It is the black fog, and how it is present in both games and how it is the villain in both games. The only thing that's not made super clear though is if the black fog made the rift from Future Connected due to people's fears of weaknesses and worries of their kingdom, or if the rift happened naturally due to the worlds beginning to merge. But it doesn't change the fact that people's fears is what created the invisible subconscious black fog, which mixed with the rift, which then the subconscious black fog then manifested in from the Xenoblade 2 universe, the Gyro, to the world of Xenoblade 1, which the black fog then took over the Gyro to make the Gyro look different. So in the end, these are the reasons for how Xenoblade Future Connected ties directly into Xenoblade 3, and the biggest way is with the black fog. So to summarize, the black fog is Zed, it is the Annihilation events, and it is Mobius, and it used to be the Fog King and the Fog Beast. These were things that were manifested by the same source due to different reasons and different fears and emotions. The black fog can be seen as the true big bad of this series. But really, that's also not the case, because like Zed said in Xenoblade 3, all of this comes from us humans being unbalanced. It all comes from our worries. Zed is the black fog with a face and a voice of its own. He came in and became a lower power when he and the two universes thought there was no higher power present, even though there was one, and it did help humanity out without the humans or Zed knowing. But like I said, Zed is the black fog with a voice of its own, and what he said when the party confronts him in Xenoblade 3 shows that maybe the black fog and Zed are not actually the real threat of the series, especially since he comes from us. I mean, let's look at how the series started. It all started with people fighting each other over many things, but specifically over an artifact, and while one other guy who let his ego and selfishness get in the way of everything does a disastrous experiment with that artifact that destroyed his world and split it into two different universes. So yeah, maybe the threat of the series is not Zed or the Black Fog. Maybe the threat of the series is all of us humans and our negative emotions that bring forth all of these things that happened. All of our fear, anger, sadness, ego, worries, hatred, pain, traumas, selfishness, and so many other negative emotions. With all that said though, this is how the Black Fog is important and how it is a big factor in Xenoblade Future Connected and how it ties in with Xenoblade 3. My next essay though is actually one that I'm very excited to write because it has to do with some of the things I talked about here, but a lot more. This is one that I've been so excited to write, so hopefully I can get to it very soon, and it's probably gonna be around the same length as this, maybe a little bit longer. In the end, I'm just really excited for my next essay, and the essay I'm gonna write after that, it will be the last Xenoblade essay I'm gonna be doing for a little while, and that's going to be my review for Xenoblade Chronicles 3. At the time of this recording, it is October 19th, 2022, so the second wave of Xenoblade 3's DLC just released with that new hero, Ino. I haven't played that yet because I started another game, so I don't really know how that story is going to tie into anything yet, but I'm not going to be implementing that into my review of Xenoblade 3, it's just going to be for the base game. But yeah, for a little while, that's going to be the last video for Xenoblade that I'm going to be making on this channel. I will be making more later on, but yeah, so far, still got 2 more videos to work on. But overall, with all this said, let's just say this. Takahashi is a genius, and again, Takahashi is the creator of the Xeno series, and I just love how deep and philosophical this Xeno series as a whole really is. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it was a little bit confusing, especially with the Black Fog section, but if you guys have any questions, just write them in the comments below and I'll answer anything that I can. It again is very simple. I'm just making it more complicated than it actually needs to be, or that it actually is. But I hope that this kind of answered some people's questions about how Future Connected ties into Xenoblade 3 and what the point of the Fog King and the Fog Beast was. Because again, a lot of people, and I still see comments about it all the time, even though the game's been out for a few months now, I still see a lot of people not sure on what the connections is or what the point of the Fog Beast and the Rift was. A lot of people do understand that it's because the universes are merging, but they don't understand how the Black Fog has to do with it, or what the Black Fog's purpose was in Xenoblade 3 at all. So hopefully this answers those questions. But again, if you guys don't understand it or still have questions, just write them down. I'll be able to answer them. With all that said, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Rate, comment, subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys next time.